Good morning. I'm Sharon with Nurse Tim, and I'd like to thank you for joining us for our webinar, Positive Dynamics in Team Teaching, featuring Tamara Browning and Sarah Kelly. We will have technical assistance available at 866-861-2896, option 1, or help at nursetim.com. Handouts are available to download for our live viewers in your login email and for archive viewers on the right side of your screen. Please note, handouts are for personal use only and are not to be distributed to others. On the Zoom toolbar, you'll find the Q&A pod usable by our live attendees. At the end of our webinar, we look forward to a discussion with your questions in the Q&A pod. Our archive listeners are encouraged to drop us an email or give us a call. We also value your input as to desired topics for future webinars. ANCC disclosures. Conflict of interest. This educational activities planners and the presenter have indicated they have no bias or conflict of interest. Successful completion. Criteria for judging successful completion of the webinar are attendance at the entire activity and submission of a completed evaluation tool. NCPD. This workshop has been awarded 1 contact hour by Nurse Tim Incorporated. Nurse Tim Inc. is accredited as a provider of nursing continuing professional development by the American Nurses Credentialing Centers Commission on Accreditation. For more information, contact help at nursetim.com. Objectives. 1. Discuss the benefits of teaching as a team in nursing education. 2. Describe effective strategies for successful team teaching. 3. Identify communication approaches that promote common goals in a team teaching environment. Purpose. This presentation is a practical approach to team teaching in nursing education with a focus on role demonstrates strong communication and cohesive teamwork. The goal of this webinar is to help educators who team teach to develop a classroom where students see communication and teamwork modeled in a professional environment. Throughout this activity, the speaker may use a variety of real and varied resources from health education vendors. They are for illustrative purposes and are not to endorse any product. All images and references to the NCSBN Next Generation NCLEX are the property of the National Council State Boards of Nursing and provided for teaching purposes only. And now I am pleased to introduce our speakers. Tamara Browning has been an Associate Professor of Nursing working in the Associate Degree Nursing program at Southern West Virginia Community and Technical College since 2019. Previous teaching experience includes Assistant Professor and LPN to RN Program Coordinator for the nursing program at Bridge Valley Community and Technical College. She has been a nurse since 1998 and in higher education since 2005. Tamara has taught medical surgical nursing, leadership and fundamentals of nursing. Throughout her teaching career, she has taught successfully in a team teaching model ranging from teams of 2 up to teams of 4. Sarah Kelly has been an assistant professor of nursing in the undergraduate Bachelor of Nursing program at West Virginia State University since August 2020. She is also an adjunct instructor for the online RN BSN program at West Virginia University, Parkersburg. Previous teaching experience includes assistant professor and team coordinator for the nursing program at Bridge Valley Community and Technical College. She has been a nurse since 2003 and teaching nursing students at various levels since 2014 in medical surgical nursing, pharmacology, leadership, research, and physical health assessment. Over the years, she has successfully functioned as an instructor in a team teaching model for undergraduate nursing programs. We are so thrilled to have both of you with us today, Tammy and Sarah.
Thank you. We want to welcome you to our presentation today. Sarah and I are very passionate about team teaching. We have been team teachers in both a environment where we actually team teach together, and then as well as where we are in a semester where we have 5-week modules. We have a lot of lessons that we would like to share with you. And most of this just comes from our experience. According to Susan Fitzel, team teaching is defined as two or more teachers working together as a team with the common goal of supporting student success and the success of the teaching team. Sarah and I taught at Bridge Valley together. We taught the same two courses every semester for 5 years. So we essentially taught the same two courses 10 times together. As in the introductions, we have both moved on to different institutions, but we are still a team. We still collaborate, bounce ideas off of each other, and support each other. And honestly, I think for both of us, our dream job would be to team teach again. Our first question for you guys is a polling question, and we are interested in, do you currently teach in a team? And it appears that those of you on here do. Let me move on to the next slide here. So the next question is, have you received formal training on team teaching? Okay, a majority of you have not, and a few of you have. Sarah and I did not receive formal training. We were placed in a situation where we had taught in semesters where we had 5-week modules. So I had a course that I taught 3 times in that same semester. So I was a team as far as a semester team, as well as Sarah. She was part of her semester team. We were not in the same semesters at this time. And then we were moved together to teach in the 4th semester of our 2-year program. That was our true team teaching experience. Neither one of us, like I said, had been provided any formal education or training on how to team teach. Therefore, we made quite a few mistakes and some big mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes we made in the very beginning, where we were both individuals teaching in the same semester. We weren't necessarily a team teaching in the same semester. And that really impaired our communication, our ideas. So it was a tough semester. By sharing our experiences, we are hoping to provide you with some guidelines to make your experience a more positive experience, as well as the experience for your students.
Hi, everyone. This is Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Tammy, for your introduction. So the first thing we are going to just talk about real briefly is the benefits of team teaching. We're seeing a huge push right now in nursing education and even practices or disciplines outside of nursing to implement team teaching model. But to reiterate what Tammy said, there is not a lot of formal education in how to make team teaching work. So first and foremost, we want to look at the benefits of team teaching. So one of the biggest benefits that I personally have noticed is that in our undergraduate careers and just in our education in general, as nurses, we are taught to collaborate. We are taught to work together with other healthcare providers to provide the best experience possible for our patients. So there is no reason that this collaborative idea should not be brought into the classroom as well. Team teaching, it is a way to diversify the education you're bringing to your students. You're getting the backgrounds and expertise of faculty from all different parts of the country, all different educational institutes. It creates engagement in the classroom. It's a great way to role model to students how to work collaboratively with others. And it also brings them a different perspective of nursing in a way that you can't do when you are teaching individually. It promotes creativity. It really gets those creative ideas flowing because you have someone that you can constantly bounce ideas off of and see different ways that other teachers and other instructors provide educational experiences to their students. So it really helps you develop creative ways to make your classroom more engaging. If your school is a strong believer in the flipped classroom, this really helped me personally develop those ideas and be creative of the experiences we provided in the classroom. Another huge benefit is it provides a checks and balance system. So you're really held accountable to make sure that you're teaching towards the learning outcomes of that class, that you're following policies and procedures, because there's someone there that's always helping you keep accountable and making sure that everything is done to the standards of your institution. Again, we're role modeling professional interaction for our students as well. They are watching everything we do and they're seeing us interact, and how we interact together provides an opportunity for them to see how intercollaboration truly works. And it also fosters critical thinking. Again, you always have that person there to provide you support and bounce off ideas, and helps you to develop the skills necessary to communicate your ideas and your feelings in a productive manner. So what is the goal of team teaching? And this is a really important topic that you should really discuss at an institutional level, a program level, and as a team. Because it's so important, and without the formal training, it's hard to understand these concepts and jump straight into teams. So the goal of team teaching is to achieve common goals. So for your common goals, it's going to be to provide the best learning experiences for your students. It's to promote mutual respect and appreciation. So, you want that mutual respect and appreciation between the team teachers as well as with the students and other faculty members. It enhances the differences and ideas, the differences in care techniques that we bring uniquely. It provides, again, accountability, and it provides enriching learning experiences to the students by seeing other people's perspectives.
One of the big mistakes that Sarah and I made when we were put together as a team was the idea that we would have a reduction in our workload. We learned very quickly that that was simply not true. We had the same amount of work and the same tasks, if you will, that needed to be completed. It was just simply, and we had to know, both of us had to know how to do all the tasks required. And what I'm referring to as far as tasks are concerned, creating the calendar, making sure the syllabus was complete, uploading assignments into our learning system, which we used Blackboard at the time, grading papers, grading clinical work. We still had to do all that. What we did find was we had a very easy division of responsibilities. We knew how to do everything, but there were some things that I was stronger at that I took care of. So I took care of the calendar. I tended to take care of the syllabus, where Sarah was very good with Blackboard. So she uploaded our assignments. She created the shell so that there was no transfer of paper between the students and us. Everything was uploaded into Blackboard. That way we could grade it and get back to them quickly in a relatively short amount of time. Some other things that we shared in the workload with were the creation of our exams. Sarah and I came up with the idea to make all of our exams comprehensive to the semester's content. And what we mean by that is our first exam was on oxygenation. Our second exam was on perfusion. So on the second exam, the students would have 95% of the exam was on perfusion, well, 90 to 95, and 5 to 10% would then be on oxygenation. I taught oxygenation, she taught perfusion. So I would type the questions for oxygenation. I would help her if she needed help, or she would help me type the other part of the test. We both took time to proofread the test. We had a policy amongst ourselves that our test had to be in Blackboard and ready to go on Friday before we left. We did not work on these over the weekend and then give it on Monday. Some other things that we both contributed to was creating the assignments. Look, figuring out the objectives that we wanted to accomplish, and how could we do that? How could we do that creatively? How could we do that without sounding like a broken record? We had many, many different projects, if you will. We did posters for CUSN one year, but then we had to create the rubric to grade them, and then we had to grade them. So we've created papers. They've had to write papers for us. Again, we had to create the rubric as well as grading them. So all of that is a shared workload, and we did divide the responsibilities in that I may create the rubric and she may type up the criteria for the assignment. One thing that we do really want to stress is when a new person is hired, there needs to be some compensation for their lack of experience. And when I'm talking about a new person, I'm talking about a nurse that has never taught before. The reason that in a team teaching setting that the experienced person or the seasoned faculty needs some compensation is because you're taking this new educator who comes to you with clinical experience, nursing experience, but no teaching experience. Because they don't understand objectives. They don't understand how objectives drive your content that you're presenting or how you're presenting it. They don't understand how to upload things into your LMS usually. So you have to teach them that. You have to help them manage their classrooms. You have to help them handle students. You have to teach them how to advise. So essentially what happens for the qualified faculty person when they are paired with someone who is not experienced in teaching, they have to work twice as hard for that semester. And sometimes it's a little longer than a semester. Compensation does not necessarily mean more money. Obviously, that would be nice, but acknowledgement that that experienced person who is mentoring and teaching this new educator with some time dedicated to that education process. The other thing that we found helpful was if there was a colleague within the college but was outside of the nursing department who would be willing to be a college mentor for this new educator. And the benefit of that was the college mentor helped to socialize the new educator to the college or the university, helped them understand the policies of the school, how committees within the school worked. And it also reduced the isolation that sometimes nursing educators in particular seem to have, because we live on this nursing island and we don't interact with anybody, particularly the first year or so that you're in education. The second benefit we found of having a faculty member from a different discipline is it provides the new faculty person with a support person outside of nursing who can provide a perspective that is most likely different than a nursing perspective. And this in turn makes the new employee or the new nurse educator more rounded. We would like to know what you, as the audience, consider would be 3 characteristics that you would like to see in a teammate. And you can type those in your Q&A box. I'll give you just a second here. Okay, so some of them that we're seeing: dependable, friendly, trustworthy, good communicator, dedication to students, creative. All of those are wonderful, and all of those are definitely true. Sarah and I, for the top 3 for us was dependability, good communication, and trustworthiness. We needed to know that we had a safe place that we could go, talk to each other, even if it was not the most positive conversation, but know that that person still had your back and was going to provide you support. So Sarah's going to talk about success strategies from an individual, and then I will come back and talk about the success strategies as a team.
All right, so we have to consider lots of different things for success strategies when we're talking about success strategies for a team, especially in nursing education. So the first thing, before you agree to team teach, or maybe you got put into a situation where you're finding your team teaching, is you really need to dig deep and ask yourself, am I a team player? I think most people would classify themselves as a team player, but sometimes that's not always the case. So we all have strengths and weaknesses when it comes to being a team player. So just recognizing your own individual strengths and weaknesses when it comes to being a team player. Am I willing to share control? And this is a huge one. I feel like this was a very big adjustment for me personally, and I would guess probably for Tammy too, when we first started team teaching, is we're both a little bit type A when it comes to control. And I think that is perfectly natural as nurses. That's what we're taught to do, is control the chaos. So it takes a little bit of self-reflection to decide how you are going to deal with sharing control. Are you a person that's ready to relinquish control completely to someone else? And understanding how your teammates are feeling about sharing control too also will help make your communication and make your team effort more successful. Do I look for strengths in others? So despite whether your team teaching was chosen for you, your coworker, your colleague, your team teacher, every educator comes with their own strengths. So recognizing those strengths in your teammates is really important. It'll enhance the learning experiences you decide, and it also helps build a stronger, trustworthy relationship. Recognizing your own personal weaknesses. And, sometimes that is the hardest thing to do. My weaknesses is I am not a very emotional person. So when students would come crying, I'm not always the most comforting person to deal with that. And Tammy's a little bit better at doing that. So, recognizing that, sometimes I need a little bit more support when it is an emotional kind of conversation with students or other faculty even, that Tammy has my back and she can help make that a more productive conversation. Am I willing to compromise when differences arise? And this is a really important one, and I think every team struggles with this. The most important thing is you need to self-reflect. So when a difference arises, what am I going to do to communicate effectively and still maintain those team dynamics? We don't ever want to say something without thinking about it first and destroying that team dynamic. And do I have the ability to communicate effectively? And as nurses, we do have the ability that we've been given many tools to communicate effectively. And one that Tammy and I actually found very successful from our communication between each other as teammates was using the SBAR method. That was kind of ingrained in us as bedside nurses. So it kind of translates to education as well. When we had a situation, I would summarize the situation, the background information. This is what I assess. What did you assess? And then our R would be, what are we going to recommend or what are we going to do to rectify the situation? So using those tools that we pulled out from bedside practice and doing some self-reflection really will add to your ability to act in a manner that promotes team dynamics.
I'm sorry, I advanced that a little quick. One of the things that I wanted to add to what Sarah was saying with relationship to the ability to communicate effectively. Sarah is from Chicago and I am from Indiana. We both live in West Virginia, but we were not raised here. And the reason that is important is because there are very different communication styles from where we were raised versus here. People in West Virginia tend to not be overly direct, and Sarah and I both are very direct. So going to the SBAR method made our communication much better in faculty meetings in particular, where everybody we worked with was from West Virginia. So that was a wonderful tool because it helped us to stay factual. It helped us not to be too abrupt and not to offend someone with our abruptness. Now, moving on to successful team strategies, we've already talked about the fact that team teaching does not reduce the workload. To make the team successful, and the reason that we're repeating this is because everybody on the team has to understand that the workload is not going to be reduced. When you have teams and one or two people on that team feel that their workload should be reduced because there's 3 or 4 people on the team, essentially what happens is that person is not pulling their weight. And that can cause a lot of resentment between team members. Sarah and I were a team of 2. We were a dynamic duo. We did not have this issue because we knew, quite frankly, that if we didn't pull our own workload, that the other one would certainly let us know. Everyone on the team should have a voice. What we mean by this, when you are in private conversation and you are discussing something, it's okay to disagree. Sarah and I did not agree on many things, but we learned over time how to voice our concerns in a proper method that allowed us to be heard and make an educated decision based on both of our perspectives. Something else that is really, really important for team success is looking for positives. Not every idea is a successful idea, but the fact that someone has provided an idea is a success. you don't want someone to be intimidated because the team's going to think I'm stupid or the team's not going to like my idea. And there have been ideas that Sarah and I have had, and we're like, ooh, that's not working very well. We're too high of a level, or the students aren't understanding us. And we've had to go back and regroup. And we've had to ask ourselves, are the students not following us because they don't have the ability to at this point? Or do we need to go back and reteach this because they really should be following us and they're not? Give recognition when deserved. As a team, everything gets clumped together as Sarah and Tammy did this, Sarah and Tammy did that. When in reality, there are things that we have done for our team independent that people should be recognized for. You know, Sarah went to and became certified in Quality Matters. She should be recognized for that. That's a positive for our team. We were able to make anything we put online meet Quality Matters standards because she took the time to go and get that certification. The next two, communication and United We Stand, these were extremely, extremely important, and they have their own slides. So we will discuss them here in just a second. Know when to let things go. Sarah was an ER nurse in a huge city hospital. My nursing experience, even though I grew up in Indiana, I graduated on Sunday and moved to West Virginia on Monday. So my entire nursing career has been in West Virginia with more rural hospitals. The difference in equipment, the difference in supplies is really huge. And sometimes we would get talking about something and I'd be like, you can't do that. They wouldn't do that. There were times that we would just be like, okay, we're just going to have to agree to disagree on this. We walk away from it. And that is something, once we agreed to disagree, we didn't keep bringing it up. We just didn't talk about it again. Do not make knee-jerk decisions. This is huge. And what we mean by that, Sarah's addressed a little bit, or we've mentioned in passing, I think, the mom and dad. Students like to play one against the other. And when you don't have good communication, students are successful at this. And they will go up to Sarah and ask her something. They don't like her answer, so they come and ask me. One of the things that we learned is when students would ask us questions separately of the other person, that we needed to say to them, I need to discuss this with Sarah, or Sarah would say, I need to discuss this with Tammy, and we will get back with you. We did not make those decisions immediately. We did not feel the pressure that the students felt. You know, it seemed very urgent to the student, but Sarah and I have learned that there is very little that's so urgent that we can't have a couple minutes to communicate about it and then make a decision. We have learned to present a united front to these students.
So share an example, take a minute, and you can share it in the Q&A if you would like an example of a break in team dynamics, and I will share an example from our experiences as well. So as you're reflecting about your own breaks in team dynamics, I think a lot of times it happens when there's a lack of communication. Communication between either the students and the faculty, the administration and the faculty team, or even between the two faculty team members or three faculty or however many you have on the team together. One of the biggest things that your institution can do to promote team dynamics and not see that break is everyone needs to understand what it means to team teach, and your institution needs to look at these issues as understanding it and what the benefits are. So if your team itself doesn't have, or your college itself doesn't have an idea of what team teaching means, and they're using it as a means to reduce workload or to compensate for lack of experience in faculty, this isn't going to be a productive team dynamics for you. So that's where, sometimes we see things go wrong. So the college itself has to understand the benefits and set up standards and support systems, such as formal and informal training for team dynamics. The program itself has to support the idea of using team teaching. Your mission and your vision for your nursing program really need to have that language in there where it is evident that interpersonal collaboration and team teaching is a part of the mission and vision of your school and your nursing program. Your team also has to have that willing and right fit to work as a team together. That's where sometimes we see our issues arise. And we have to think individually, communication, experience, not letting the students play the mom and dad, not making knee-jerk decisions. That's all going to play into positive team dynamics.
Now we're going to address communication strategies. There are 4 components that we are going to address: the setting, where is communication occurring, the tone of the communication, the method of communication, and follow-up to communication.
So when we talk about setting, it's really important when you're meeting with your team teaching group that you are meeting on mutual ground. And you can kind of see these dynamics play out in your everyday office life. But if it's going to be a tough conversation where decisions have to be made, it's better to meet in a break room or an empty classroom or some sort of communal space instead of having one member of the team sitting behind their desk and everyone else sitting in chairs normally where students would sit. Having mutual ground will help foster a level of comfort between the team, make everyone feel like their opinion isn't perfect and not putting someone at a higher stance than the rest of the team members. When Tammy and I chose our setting for our conversations, for our decision making, it was kind of dictated about what we were doing. So if we're talking about planning out preceptors and matching preceptors with students, we would need lots of workspace. So we would need somewhere where we could spread out, have our computer, we could write on a whiteboard if we needed to, because I'm a visual person. Tammy likes to have things in writing. So it really helped us picking a setting where everyone could be collaborative together. You really want to have a goal when you meet as your team. What is your goal for this meeting? Try to stay on topic as best as you can. Try to reduce the amount of distractions. There's nothing worse than being in a meeting and someone's looking at their phone. So, just to have those ground rules of when we're meeting in our team, we put away our cell phones. We're not checking our email. And accessibility is really important. And when I say accessibility, I'm not necessarily talking about being accessible to your team, but I'm talking about being not accessible to students or even your administrators during your team meetings. So sometimes we had to get a little creative like this. Tammy and I had a hidden meeting spot that we would meet in the garden on the roof because we could sit down and be uninterrupted by students, by our boss, by those things that would take you away from giving your full attention to your team and making decisions.
When we are talking about the tone of communication, it's very important to understand the differences between formal and informal. Formal communication can be your lecture or your instruction that you are providing to the student. It can be when you're discussing serious matters. How are we going to handle this student's action. Meetings should be formal. As well, informal are the conversations that you're having as you're walking down the hall or you're on a break. Informal conversations are not necessarily a private conversation. This is where we have a lot of creative ideas, just bouncing things off as we're walking down the hall. Serious versus creative. Again, your serious conversations would fall into that formal category. Serious communications require thoughtful processes. How are we going to handle this? There's usually a decision that's being made. Information is being provided. There's not as much back and forth. Creative, there's a lot of back and forth. Well, did you think about this, or what about this? Sarah and I had a lot of fun in our professional nursing class. And some of the activities, we would scour the internet for activities. And some of the things that we came up with, we found building bridges with marshmallows and spaghetti to improve communication and management styles for our students, or to teach them those concepts. Well, then we thought, well, man, wouldn't it be fun if we had them draw a blueprint and they had to then share that blueprint with another team. So that was creative, flowing ideas. Speaking and listening. When you're speaking, in public, we use we, our team, Sarah and myself, whereas in private, we use I statements. I feel this way. I think we should do this. Listening is key. Do I listen with an open mind, or am I listening trying to formulate my response? Again, here's where the SBAR format came into play for us. We use this in all forms of meetings. Communication can be public communication. Public communication is where, if you will, the whole world is watching. People are watching to see how you communicate. They watch to see how you talk to each other. This is where the we statements and being united are very, very important. Private conversations, that's where your sensitive communication comes in. And this is where you use more of your I statements. Sarah and I were very, very strict about our emails and the boundaries that we had with students. We determined that we did not want our students to have our cell phones. We wanted them to communicate to us with email. We were not going to be friends with them on social media. Social media was not an appropriate way to communicate with us. They needed to use our school emails. They were required to email both Sarah and I. That doesn't mean that Sarah and I both responded to their email, but we both saw it and we both saw the response. Sarah and I were very good at knowing which one of us was going to answer the email. If it was our content that we presented, we would answer the email. If it was a touchy-feely sort of situation, I tended to answer them. If it was a pretty direct response, Sarah tended to answer them. The only time that we would not say something to the student about emailing both of us was when they were requesting an advising meeting with one of us because one of us would be their advisor, or they were wanting help with a specific content area that we taught.
And going along with that, with the emails, it's really important for your team to stay on the same page. This was probably one of the biggest challenges for us when we first started team teaching, because we would have all these wonderful, like, creative ideas and meetings between each other, but we would forget to write stuff down. So it's really important to stay on the same page. So there's a lot of tools out there, technology tools out there for you to stay on the same page. One that was really helpful for us is we used OneNote and had a class notebook just for the two of us, so we could drop things in there, put our meeting minutes in there just to help us recall and remember what we had talked about. You want to have frequent meetings. Those don't always have to be formal meetings. You know, it can be going out for coffee, meeting after a clinical, or you can make them formal. Assess and evaluate. So if we made any decisions, just like we would do for accreditation or evaluation, we would assess what we did and evaluate the outcomes. Again, record, write stuff down, and make sure that all team members have access to it. It is really important for all team members to have access to anything that you guys write down or keep as minute notes. And recall. It also helps with recall. As I said, you know, we all know that it can get very hectic and busy, and if you don't write things down or record them, then you're likely to forget that great idea or that great creative moment that you had.
We have talked about a majority of these items under the United We Stand. Sarah and I were a team that was together, and we always presented ourselves as in agreement. What we did and what we said behind closed doors was between her and I. But to everyone else, the program, the college, our students, we were united. We stood together, we had each other's back. An example, we had a situation where students did not do very well on an exam. And long story short, the students went to our program director, who stood behind us and supported us. They went up the chain to the dean and the chief academic officer, who really wanted us to manipulate their grades for the students. Sarah and I refused to do that. And we stood together. We felt that was unethical, and we stood together in that meeting. And we're like, we are not going to do that. That was a very challenging time. Some other things that we did that helped us be united is when we both sat in each other's lectures. So when Sarah was lecturing or I was lecturing and a student was not understanding what we were trying to communicate with them, and they were getting frustrated and we were getting frustrated, the other person would speak up and try to explain it in another way and see if that helped. So we intervened to promote positivity in the classroom. We intervened to promote learning in the classroom. We also, one of the funny things is we received comments on our evaluations about facial expressions. So Sarah and I developed an emoji code. So when we noticed that one of us were starting to have facial expressions that the students may perceive as negative, we would send an emoji in a text format to the other person. Since we both wear iWatches, it would come up on our iWatch, we could see it, and we knew exactly what it meant. So that was another way that we communicated. Nobody knew what those emojis meant except the two of us. Engagement in learning activities. When you are flipping the classroom, all team members need to be present and need to be active in the flip. That promotes learning, that promotes communication, that helps answer questions. When you have a new educator, that person needs to have the experience in the classroom with them, ideally in the clinical setting with them. Everyone needs to be there for proctored exams, final exams, any controversial experiences. You're not going to send a new educator in to talk to a student who's filing a grievance because they failed a course. So it's providing support for that new educator as well.
One of the biggest things we need to keep in mind when we're team teaching is we're role modeling for our students. They're watching everything we're doing, whether we realize it or not, just like Tammy said with our facial expressions. So team teaching is really role modeling for students. It's role modeling teamwork. They're watching us to see how we interact together. You know, they can pick up when something might be controversial, and they're looking to use the way that you communicate as a team and the way you work through problems together. It's giving them an idea of what teamwork means, how it functions in nursing, and helping them understand the importance of those dynamics. Communication, we're role modeling communication. You know, you never want to disagree in front of the students. You know, we always wanted to have a united front, and even if things did come up that were controversial or we may have disagreed with in class, you know, it's okay to have disagreements, but we both show mutual respect in our conversations or in our discussions in front of the students, because that's showing them how to respect others when they don't have the same viewpoints as us. Professionalism, you know, nursing is built on teamwork. There's a lot of different professionals nurses come across and have to work with on a daily basis. So it's helping role model the idea of what it means to be a professional. Of course, collaboration. Two heads are always better than one, and so collaborating together opens new creative ideas, new learning experiences, just new methods of teaching and providing those experiences to our students. And problem solving. You know, if you have a team put together that you teach with, you can solve a lot more problems than trying to make those decisions on your own. There's always someone there to have that conversation with, bounce back ideas, and come up with the best answer possible for the team and for your students as well.
So this concludes our presentation. We'd like to open it up for any questions that you have for Sarah and I, or anything that you would like to be clarified. You can just type your questions in the Q&A box. One of the questions that we get is, what do you see as the biggest pitfalls to team teaching?
Well, I feel like the biggest pitfalls to team teaching is when the college or the university or the institution, wherever you're teaching, is not on board, that they're using team teaching as a way to reduce workload or to have less qualified, experientially qualified faculty members. So I think that's a big pitfall, is that everyone needs to understand, like we've stressed, that it's not a reduction in workload. It's to provide meaningful learning experiences for our students and to enrich their learning experiences.
How do you handle, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, so kind of going on that, what do you think institutions, Tammy, can do to promote positive team teaching?
I believe that they should implement a mentor system in situations, so that if you have two people coming together that have never team taught, they have a resource to go to that has team taught and knows the pitfalls and knows how to support the team. I think the college needs to educate other disciplines regarding team teaching, that it is not a reduction in workload, because that's a problem that we see sometimes. So we have a question here. Mm-hmm. How is workload determined when a course is team taught? Is it based on number of students per section, or completely by the entire credits in the course?
So I think it really depends on your institution and what their policies are. We we have worked in an institution that supported team teaching, but it really came down to at the programmatic level that there were policies in place to determine what workload is. So for us, for Tammy and I, we taught 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 credit hours, the same exact students by ourselves. So really our workload itself wasn't decreased, it was the same. We were still teaching the same amount of questions or the same amount of work that we would normally teach by ourselves, or the same amount of credit hours that we would normally teach by ourselves. So our program itself, every semester team taught. So that was just kind of how it was done. And so, it really comes down to the program, what their policies and procedures are, or even the institution itself, as far as determining workload. If your institution is based on contact hours or number of credit hours taught, that really takes some buy-in, again, from the college itself, as well as the program. Do you have anything to add to that?
And in addition to what Sarah's saying, we taught all of the 4-semester students together. There were CRN numbers that were assigned to her. There were CRN numbers that were assigned to me. Our IT department married those CRN numbers in our LMS, so we only had to put information up once, and it went to all the CRN numbers that we were assigned. That's how it was handled at an institutional level. The workload at the course level was divided based on our strengths. I have a background in respiratory therapy, so I taught oxygenation. Sarah has an ER background, so she taught perfusion, she taught trauma. That is how we divided the content. How do you handle a situation when you don't like your teammate or your teammates?
I personally feel like, you don't have to, we've been very lucky in our team that we actually, enjoy each other's company, but I can see where this could be an issue if you have a team member that you don't get along with, maybe on a personal level. And I think that's okay. That's part of being professional, and that's part of doing our job. Is you're not going to have the same viewpoints as everyone else. And that's where it's really important to have good communication skills. You don't have to be best friends with your team. You just have to function in a way that's professional and productive and can provide those experiences for your students.
I would agree with that. And when you have a teammate that does not do their portion, this is where Sarah and I were very skilled, because we weren't rude, but we were very direct. We didn't drop hints. We just said, hey, I need some more help with this, and I feel like you're not giving it to me. So we tend to be very blunt with each other. I think every team has to determine that level of bluntness for themselves, but you have to be direct about it. How you present that directness is up to you. Sarah, would you add anything to that?
I would definitely agree with that, being direct is better than kind of trying to avoid the topic. It promotes more open communication and helps everyone stay on task, definitely. So Tammy and I would like to thank all of you for coming to our presentation today. Sharon is going to jump back on here and let you know how you can fill out your evaluation to get your continuing education credit. Thank you so much.
Thank you both, Tammy and Sarah, for presenting lots of great information here. So thank you for sharing that. And it's fun to have you share your own experience with us about team teaching and what you've learned. And now I'd like to thank all of our attendees also for joining us, and we invite you to fill out an evaluation for your NCTD contact hour, and also submit your valued feedback or any questions that you have. For our live viewers, a new screen is going to appear in just a moment. Please click the continue button to proceed to the short survey evaluation that will produce your certificate. And for our archive viewers, please click that evaluation link on the right side of your screen. Thank you to everyone for joining us today.